morning. Happy Mother's Day again. Do y'all love Mother's Day? Is it the greatest holiday on earth? It's a good day. Some moms love Mother's Day. Some moms not so much. I understand. But you deserve to be celebrated. And I get it. Not every mother relationship is in a beautiful place. So some moms, maybe we don't always feel like we want to celebrate them. But they birthed you. Believe it or not, you were birthed by a mother. I know. Maybe you just appeared by random happenstance, but that's not true. Somebody birthed you. So they carried you. And even if all you can do is honor the memory of them or honor what that was worth, I think that's still a beautiful thing. You know, when I was youth pastor, I used to connect with a lot of young people that had really strained relationships with their parents. I have no idea why I'm going here right now, but apparently somebody needs to hear this, so we're going there. I used to connect with a lot of young people that had really strained relationships. They were not happy with their father, not happy with their mom, and it was rough. And I used to really encourage them because I didn't have any kind of answer for them, and I never wanted to go against their parents, right? Because it's their parents. I'm not their parent. I'm just like this voice. So I used to always tell them, if all you can do is honor them for the fact that they gave you a chance at life, then just do that. Just honor them. Just say to yourself and then remind yourself when you're around them to be thankful that they gave you a chance. They gave you a shot at this life. They're not doing it perfect. They're not doing it. Now that I'm a parent, right, I understand that I'm doing about the best I can do in most things. I could get better, yes, right? But I got the tools I got the things I got. I understood that then, but those kids, I feel like it just helped them a little bit because at least them gave them something to say, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad, for. And if that was it, right? Like it was a little bit of a blessing. And so I thought that was helpful. Maybe that helps you. Maybe you're like, whatever. But anyway, happy Mother's Day. My mom is here. Thank you, Mom. Love you. Good job. You did some things for Doug, for little Dougie, little Douglas. Did you ever call me Dougie? I don't think you did. People call me that. No, I cannot do the Dougie. The last thing you want is me up here doing some sort of Dougie dance. Nope. Not even going to try. Shout all you want. You get nothing but a big no. Other people call me Dougie, and I always wondered if you did. I don't think you ever did call me Dougie, though. That's all right. I know I was called Doogie a lot in school because when I was growing up, that Doogie Howser show, does anybody know what this show is? You remember this show, right? That was super popular. And apparently my name wasn't that common, so I became Doogie. So and I was, I wasn't like a super nerd. I was like half a nerd. Half of me was cool, but the other half was a little nerdy. But I always knew all the answers in class, but a lot of times I just wouldn't raise my hand because I didn't want to be that kid. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Like you just kind of hold back. You're like, I got this information, I know it, but man, I've answered the last 4, so I need to just chill for a second, right? So sometimes I just kind of play dumb, like, oh, that's brand new information. Great, thank you, teacher. But happy Mother's Day. Thank you, moms. Thank you all, ladies. Again, like I said earlier, the nurturing spirit of women comes from God. That's a godly trait. And it's a gift that you have for this world, and man, we need it. We need some nurturing. Today, we are talking about validated spirit. Say validated. My goal today is to say this word so many times that it loses all meaning to you and you have a struggle to hear it ever said again. That's my goal, right? I think it's in my notes about 300 times. So good luck. You're going to say validated, validated. This word has lost all meaning. You ever had that happen where you're saying something and then it just stops like, I can't, it's like it's coming out of my mouth. I don't even hear it right. Validated. Validated spirit. And why in the world are we talking about this? Well, I woke up with this word validation in my head one morning, and it has stuck with me since then. It was a couple weeks ago. You ever get woken up real early in the morning for who knows why? And this word just like popped into my head. And I was thinking about it for today, and it just kind of stuck with me, and it evolved as I sort of marinated and chewed on it. And I cannot believe how important validation is to humanity. Even in the little bit of research that I did, right? Even amongst couples or families, validation is quite possibly one of the most powerful tools. Couples that practice validation have a 94% chance of making it. 94. That's really high. Families that practice validation still probably have like a 50% chance of making it. I don't know. I don't really know what the percentage is. I made that up. But the couples one is true. Validation, as we look across the landscape of culture, social media, hello, Facebook, my all-time favorite website ever. Not really, I hate it. I always say I never miss a chance to dump on Facebook. I just love it. I love trashing it. It's the greatest thing on earth. Anyway, as I look across the landscape, I see so often the need for validation amongst people. Now, what does this mean, right? Okay, obviously I'm going to tell you what validation means. I don't just expect you to know what I'm talking about. At the smallest, easiest definition, validation can simply mean to add value. Something that is valid to you has value. It's valuable. Something that's valid, a thought that you have that's valid, an opinion you have that's valid, something that you do that is valid, it has value. That's a very simplified definition, but at least it gives us sort of a starting point. I think, though, that validation is so much deeper and so much more than that. It's more than just a term. It's more than just feeling approval, which we kind of understand. Hopefully you understand feeling the approval and all that when someone's like, yes, you're good, I like you, you're doing a good job, that was a great decision. And then if disapproval is, no, I don't like you, that was a terrible decision, you're ruining your life, right? So those we kind of understand. But validation to me goes a little bit deeper, and it's more an experience than it really is a term, a place. It's more than just adding value. To me, it has such a deeper meaning. I think it has more to do with when someone sees value in you, and you also can allow yourself to see that value as well. I'll say that again. I think it's more when someone sees value in you, and you also can agree, yes, there's value. I like this word, establishing. I think validation establishes people, settles people. And it also has this really zesty term that goes with it, in my opinion. It's true. It has truth. I think this is why the phrase, and it's an Oprah phrase, so don't hate on Oprah, but this is my truth. Anybody said this? This is my truth. I like this phrase. So you can raise your hand if you've said it or heard it. It's okay. Don't be afraid. I like this phrase. This is my truth, right? And I think what we're saying in some ways is this feels like validation. This is valid to me, right? It has value. It feels approval. There's some truth to it. Now, when it comes to validation, it's very simple to see thoughts, feelings, actions. Those are things that we like to have validated, right? When you're having a thought about something and you have an idea, or maybe you want to, start a new business, or maybe you just want to rearrange your yard or something like that, and you speak this idea out in existence to somebody that will probably be like, yeah, that's cool, and they say, oh, that's such a great idea. Wow, how'd you think of that, right? You feel that sense of validation. You feel like, yeah, that was a great idea. Sometimes in relationships, feelings or emotions can be shared, right? We can say, I'm sad, angry, mad, happy, hurt, whatever. And that person can say, oh, wow, yeah, that's great, cool, whatever. Can we talk about something else? And sometimes our actions, right? Our actions can be validated by people. If we did something really good, like we were successful in business, or we did a great job on some project that we were doing, and someone goes and notices and says, wow, that was really good. And you're like, yeah, it was. I did it. I did a good job. But the thing that I want to get at today, and I hope you walk out of here understanding and I don't know it all. Believe it or not. I know it's hard to believe. I don't know it all. And even on this subject, I absolutely don't know it all. But my hope is that we could transcend beyond thoughts, feeling, and action validation and get to a place where our spirit is at a place of validation, where our spirit is validated, where we see, as God sees, the worth or the value that we have apart from actions, thoughts, and feelings. That we're worth something if we do it right or don't do it right. That we hold tremendous value to God if we act right or don't act right. That we are something valuable to Him even if our thinking is right or our thinking isn't right. That's what I mean by a validated spirit. Now, validation of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions can have both negative and positive effects, right? You can have a negative opinion validated by somebody else. Does that help you? Probably not. If you go around thinking, gosh, so-and-so politician is an idiot, and you find sources that validate that, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. But that validation of your thought or your opinion doesn't necessarily help you, does it? You can have a valid emotion of, man, I'm feeling awful about my life, I'm sad, I'm hurt, and somebody else could come along and say, yeah, your life sucks. It's awful. And you go, gosh, see, you see it too. See, I am messed up, right? That's not a good validation. You don't want to walk away with that kind of validation, right? You can slice the tires of your ex-boyfriend's car, and your best friend can go, good job. You got him. They validate your action, but was that a very good action? Well, for some people, they might go, yeah, it was. Good old Carrie Underwood beating up trucks with bats. She wrote a whole song about it. I think a lot of times we have things reversed. We hope that if our thoughts, I know we might be getting heavy, but just try to stick with me. We feel like if our thoughts and our feelings and our actions are validated, then we are. And so we look for support. We look for support about our opinions. We look for support about the way we think. We look for support about the way we feel. We look for support about our actions. And if those things are validated the way we want them to, then we feel validated. Imagine the difference if you flipped that. Imagine if your spirit was at such a place of validation that your thoughts, feelings, and actions that you do out in the world, whether they're validated by people or not, really don't matter. Because you have an intrinsic value. And I see us, a large part of our life and our daily walk and what we do is a search for validation. We're searching for it. We're looking for it. Where is it? And so like I said, I woke up with this word in my head, and I started thinking about it in a spiritual connotation. Because I was thinking about, what we search for validation of what we do and all those things, and sometimes it helps us, sometimes it doesn't. But then I was thinking about, validation from God is always available to us. And I started to think to myself, but why don't we live that way? Why do we always have it reversed? And how do we inject a validated spirit into our daily lives so we can actually experience a true worth of who we are? Man, if only we knew, it'd be so good, right? Well, I don't have the answer for you, so thanks for coming today. Love you guys. See you next time. No, I'm kidding. And so that got me to this place where I'm like, how do we get this validated spirit from God? How do we have this intrinsic value? I can read the Bible all day long, and I can listen to all the great preachers out there tell me, but it's got to go a little bit further than that, doesn't it? Because that's just kind of information that I can hear and process and think about, but I want to actually experience it. I want my thoughts, my feelings, my actions to be motivated by the validated spirit, not hoping that if I get that validation that somehow then it means I'm worth something. Okay. So let's talk about it. How do we receive validation from the Lord? Is it a receiving? Is it a realization? We've got verses in the Bible about God knowing the number of hairs on your head. Some of us have millions. Some of us have a few dozen. We'd still love you. That's what a mother's love is for. If you're bald, your mom will still love you. Don't worry. She might have some comments. Some moms have comments. That's okay. Some comments from mom are good. Some comments from mom are better left unsaid. Not my mom. Not you, Mom. No, I'm just... Yeah, it's like everything I say today, people are going to think I'm talking about you, Mom, and I'm really not. I didn't design my message around what you needed to hear for Mother's Day. More like what I need to hear for today. But we got verses in the Bible about the hairs on our head. We got verses about God loving us unconditionally. We got verses about him knowing us in the womb and choosing us before the foundations of the world. We have verses about the plans that God has for us. Some people have said there's approximately 3,000 promises in the Bible to humanity from God. And all those things are true, but how does that apply and play out in our daily lives? Gosh, that sounds really important when I say it like that, doesn't it? It does to me. I think a validated spirit to me is such a huge part of our walk with the Lord that without it, we're always going to be really struggling. And it boils down to understanding, just like we sang a minute ago, about the love that God has for us. That's really, at the simplest point, that's understanding God's love. Now, the opposite, or a opposite of validation, is rejection, right? Sort of saying, you don't have value, you don't matter, I'm not interested in what you have to say, right? And sometimes indifference is sort of that when I just don't care one way or the other about something, it really doesn't matter. Indifference is just another form of rejection. It's just a passive rejection. Like, I'm not going to say I don't like it, but I'm just not going to eat it, or I'm just not going to agree, or I'm just not going to say it. I'm just going to be quiet. It's not valuable enough for me to even have a response. Sometimes that's even harsher than a verbal rejection, right? Because at least when somebody tells you they don't like you, you know where you stand. If they just always act like they don't like you, but you don't really know or not, right? That's kind of hard. All right, so let's talk about Jesus' validation. You ready for this? And this is a good Mother's Day story. Everybody know the story of Jesus turning water into wine? It's a great story. I'm going to read it real quick because not everybody is familiar with the story, so we're going to read it and then I'm going to talk about it, okay? So it comes from John chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. John is the fourth gospel in the Bible. It was written a long time after Jesus' death. Some close to 40 some years later, John wrote, maybe even longer. I don't have the exact years, but it was a distance. So John chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, we got this weird, awesome, amazing miracle of Jesus turning water into wine at a party. It's like, wow, cool. I didn't know Jesus was so hip. This is awesome. Great. Let's do it. Let me read through it first. This comes from the Message translation, and then we're going to kind of talk about a couple points. 3 days later, there was a wedding in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. Jesus and his disciples were guests also. When they started running low on wine at the wedding banquet, Jesus' mother told him, they're just about out of wine. Jesus said, is that any of our business, mother? Yours or mine? This isn't my time. Don't push me. So she went ahead anyway, telling the servants, whatever he tells you, do it. So then they had 6 stone water pots that were there, used by the Jews for ritual washings. Each held 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus ordered the servants, fill the pots with water, and they filled them to the brim. Now, fill your pitchers and take them to the host, Jesus said, and they did. When the host tasted the water that he had become wine, he didn't know what had just happened, but the servants, of course, knew. He called out to the bridegroom, everybody I know begins with their finest wines, and after the guests have had their fill, brings in the cheap stuff. But you've saved the best till now. This act in Cana of Galilee was the first sign Jesus gave, the first glimpse of his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum along with his mother, brothers, disciples, and stayed several days. So there's the miracle of Jesus turning water into wine. If you don't get the point, invite Jesus to your parties. That's the point. My man can refill the wine like this. Don't mess around. Now, just to stomp on your old school theology, Those were taught in Sunday school that this was grape juice. Sadly, it was not. It was wine. It was wine. It had alcohol in it. Does this mean that Jesus and God approve of drinking wine? Yes! No. Calm down. It's okay. Yeah, got to wake them up every now and then. Obviously, with moderation, okay, we can do this. We're okay, right? Everybody's okay? We're all still friends. If you feel like you need to leave, that's fine. I'll still love you. So we got this great story, and right away, go back to the first section there, Mr. Evan Man. So 3 days later, they're at this village. Weddings of this time was a community affair. I just watched the movie Fiddler on a Roof. Anybody seen this movie? It's old school from the 70s. It's crazy old. There's a great example of a Jewish wedding. They all come out on the street. The whole village shows up to the wedding, right? And they're dancing and crazy Russian Jewish dances I've never seen. It's awesome. It's a great moment. But I'm not necessarily recommending the movie. It's kind of long and a little boring, to be honest. But it's not necessarily a bad movie either. Anita, can you do a movie review on Fiddler on the Roof? Thank you. So that'll help you. You can watch Anita's movie review when she does that. Anyway, the whole community comes out. This is not like your traditional wedding where we do now, right? Where we get dressed up, everybody puts on nice clothes, they go to the wedding, kind of how long is it going to take. Then they show up to the reception where the food is, right? That's the real party where everybody wants to be at, okay? And then we sit around, wait for people to get their pictures taken, hoping to God it only takes like 15 minutes because everyone's starving, and we paid basically for this. You didn't actually pay for it, but you dropped a 50 in the card, so it's kind of like you paid for your meal, right? You understand how weddings work today, right? It's not a secret to anybody. So they're all there. This is different. They're all outside. They're all in the middle of the community. And these weddings last days up to a week. It's a party that just doesn't end. So it needs lots of food, and it needs some wine, right? That's kind of the what you drank back then. Water. If you and I got a glass of water from back then, it would be so dark you couldn't see through it, okay? We are very blessed with how our water looks today. That's not how water looked back then, okay? It was cloudy. I'll say that. So Jesus' mother being there, it wasn't like Jesus showed up with his mom at the wedding. That's kind of the whole point I'm trying to make. Everybody in the community was there together. And Jesus' disciples show up. Now, if you run out of wine at a wedding in this era, it was kind of embarrassing, right? It was sort of like, ooh, did you not prepare? Were you not ready? Did you not have the right caterer? Like, what happened? Like, imagine you sat through the pictures, you waited the extra hour while they introduced everybody, you are the last table called, and when you get up to that buffet, the last piece of roast beef you watch go out on the person's plate in front of you, right? You would not feel great about that. You might just go back in that box and pull your card out and just transition a little bit of the money that was paid, right? You might. Now, no one here would do that. Anyway. What's the most interesting about these first three verses when Mary tells him, hey, they're just about out of wine. She doesn't say, hey, turn some water into wine. It's implied that she knows he can do that. Now, I don't know if randomly at home, when people were taking baths, Jesus would just show up and do a prank and just turn their bath water into wine. I don't know. Somewhere along the lines, Mary knows he's capable of turning water into wine. So apparently he's done this a few times, once or twice. And she knows. And so she kind of and she doesn't come out and just tell him. She sort of implies it like, hey, they're almost out of wine. Wink, wink. Now, maybe she thought he had money and should go buy wine. That's possible. That's possible. Could be. So in verse 4, Jesus sort of has this response to his mom. Is that any of our business, mother, yours or mine? This isn't my time. Now the message translates it into, don't push me. Like Jesus here, talking to Mary, don't push me, Mom. It's not my time. Chillax. Now, this phrase has boggled scholars for decades, for centuries. Because there is a bit of a harshness to what Jesus says here, as if Stay out of my business, Mom, and I'll stay out of yours, right? Some of us understand a mom that's a little pushy, right? Some of you understand what that's like to have a mom that's sort of like, okay, this isn't my time, Mom, chill. Was he irritated, annoyed? Some translations soften the wording and just kind of make it seem like Jesus is like, well, what would you have me do, mother? Now, maybe Mary was a little irritated that Jesus showed up with 12 people at this wedding that was already strapped for wine, and he comes walking in with 12 of his bros like, hey, we're here for the wedding. What's up? I don't know about you, but if you've ever had that person, that guest that you invite to a party, and you're about to order pizza, and you remember that so-and-so's coming, and you're like, we should probably order a whole extra pizza just so we got so-and-so covered. Does anybody have that person in their life where it's like, hey, if he's there or she's there, we got to make sure we got another whole pizza for them, right? Maybe that's what Mary was like. You just brought Peter, and Peter, bro, goes through gallons of wine. Come on, Jesus, you can't be showing up to a wedding with Peter like this. I don't know. So he tells his mom, don't push me. Verse 5, she goes ahead anyway. She went ahead anyway, right? Sometimes moms just have to go ahead anyway. Sometimes they do. As much as kids want to say, come on, get off my back, chillax, they're going to go, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. She tells the servants, whatever he tells you, do it. Is she being rebellious to Jesus? I don't know. So then the miracle happens, right? They've got pots that are used for washing that turn into wine. Now, this miracle's value is a lot bigger than it looks like on the surface. If these things held 20 to 30 gallons of wine, we're talking about close to 900 to 1,000 bottles of wine. That's a lot. That's more than they probably ever had at any wedding at any time ever. Now, wine back then wasn't actually that differently priced as it is today. A simple, decent bottle of wine then was probably $5. A nice bottle of wine probably ran 10 to 15. Fine wines, 50 on up to 100. So Jesus turning 1,000 bottles of wine out of bathwater is a $50,000 miracle. Maybe a $100,000 miracle. For what? For what? What was this miracle for? Did the guests know what happened? The servants did, but was anybody going to listen to them? The disciples knew. I bet you that groom knew, because he was like, bro, we just got 50 grand worth of wine showing up. Dang. Somebody paid. It's fascinating to me. And I know we laughed, and it's fun to talk about all that intricacies of all that stuff, but at the end of the day, this was a validating moment for Jesus. This was a moment where human Jesus received some form of validation for who he was. His mom had to push him into it. She might have been a little pushy, who knows? Maybe Jesus was a little bit too reserved. But God never had any doubt. This reads validation to me. And if you might think, well, Jesus needed validation, he was human, right? And I want you to think about all the validation moments in Jesus' life. His birth. His birth came with dreams, visitation by angels. Remember his childhood, for those at the temple that remember he was teaching people at 12 years old? The start of his ministry when he showed up, his first miracle that he performed, the mountaintop experience where Moses and Elijah showed up with him, his journey in the desert when he was being challenged. And if you read the 3 challenges that he gets in the desert, man, they sure do stink of a little bit of a validation situation, don't they? The dove experience where he's baptized and the clouds open up and a dove descends and a voice from heaven is heard. This is my son in whom I'm well pleased. Sounds like validation to me. Seeing his friend resurrected from the dead, the woman cleaning his feet with perfume, even the Pontius Pilate understood and saw the truth in him. The thief on the cross, recognizing who he was. His resurrection, his ascension, all these things validated him. They brought validation. But along that journey, I want you to remember, almost as many validation moments as Jesus experienced, he also seemed to experience quite a few rejection moments. When he was born, there was an attempt to kill all the kids his age. There was a moment where his family thought he was crazy. His brothers came to take him away. There was always the religious scholars trying to trap him with these yes or no questions that would mess up his whole why he was there. His disciples get in arguments about who's better or who's not better. Peter trying to manipulate him by saying, no, you don't need to go to the cross. No, you don't need to die. Judas, one of his disciples, outright betraying him. The rejection of his own people at the cross when they said, Barabbas, we'll take Barabbas. Crucify Jesus. And then Peter even lies. One of his best friends lies and says, I don't even know who that is. And then the torture leading to his death. And then even his death alone, a rejection. So we see even in Jesus' life, as many great validation moments there were also these moments of rejection. It would seem that there's a deeper truth within him about himself, about this journey towards. One that was greater than just what happened to him. There was something in him. Rejection is never easy for anybody to face or experience. Indifference is always painful. A validated spirit, even Jesus, isn't immune to any of that. But the deeper truth that he was established in energized him to walk and move forward anyway. Inch by inch, yard by yard, day by day. You see, this receiving of this validated spirit, this receiving of what I'm calling validation, like I said, is an experience. It's a journey. It's an everyday journey. There is no kumbaya moment where in a service or in a prayer or some person lays a hand on you and suddenly you completely, fully understand being validated. Or suddenly you understand the value that you have in God's eyes. It's an everyday, step-by-step walk. I wish the kumbaya experience could happen. I wish that it was available. I wish that, and yes, we can have the knowledge of that, right? But it takes time for it to fully establish us. This is why I think often we want our thoughts, feelings, and actions to be validated because that's easier. Because I have something I can do about it. I can go and find someone that'll validate my thoughts. I can go and find someone that'll validate what I've done. I can go and find information that'll validate my feeling. I can find it out there and it makes me feel better. But the only thing that can validate your spirit is God. And as much as people's validation is important and means something to us, it's a validated spirit that can allow you to stay on this journey day after day, facing good, facing bad, facing hardship, facing rejection, facing joy, facing faith, whatever comes your way. A validated spirit continues to move forward. And a lot of times, it is an inch-by-inch battle. I think for too long, Christianity has gotten in too many battles about valid theology or valid faith or valid whatever belief systems. We've gotten into battles about what's right or what's wrong. And yes, that stuff is still important. I'm not trying to say it's not. I remember going through a season years ago in my life where that was so important to me that what I believed and what I thought, and it was like I had to establish, like, what is it that I really believe about this? What is it I really believe about that? And then like it changes and adjusts and it becomes different. And sometimes I'd get so obsessed with right theology or valid theology that I would forget that it was you that really mattered. And it was me that really mattered. And I think sometimes our belief system has built about what you believe or what you think is more important to be valid than you. I think sometimes we've even traded our validation just so that we could have a valid belief system. The truth is that God has done everything he needs to do to validate you and I. But the journey of our lives as we navigate this world is to come to a fuller and fuller understanding of that validation. The journey is hard, murky, sometimes dirty. It's like turning bathwater into wine. I wish that it happened overnight like it did in this miracle. But it's a process. And it takes your whole life. It takes every day, every step, every inch. And if it gets too hard, and we start to get this feeling like it's taking too long, or it's not working, or I'm not feeling any better, then we turn and hope that our thoughts and our feelings and what we do could be validated, because at least that gives me a moment where I feel like I'm doing something right or wrong. God has given everything he needs to give to fully validate who you are. The moment you stepped foot, or the moment you became a thing on planet Earth, your spirit was fully validated. His love for you, the value that he puts on you, what he places on you, who you are, your spirit is fully validated. And if you look, the world is really not even looking for people with a bunch of validated theology or a bunch of validated opinions or even validated actions. Those are all good things, but the world is really searching for some real truth, some real validation. They're looking for people that are on the journey and understand how to move it forward. They're looking for people that are able to impart around them that same validation, that same value that they receive. God gave humanity the greatest tool to truly let it understand what validation is. And it's not the Bible, and it's not the Holy Spirit, and it's not church, and it's not your mom. It's you and it's me. Because people with a validated spirit truly journey through life, adding value everywhere they go. When the Bible talks about everything you touch prosper, it's because of a validated spirit that brings value to everything you interact with. It increases what people feel about themselves. Are you responsible for it for them? Absolutely not. Are you in charge of everybody else's validation? No. But you sure as heck can add to it. I think a key to validation could be to become a person who validates others. When I watch Jesus all throughout the Gospels, they constantly wanted him to validate their belief or to tell them what he believed. And every time they'd get him with one of those yes or no questions, what would he do? He would turn it around on them and ask about the spiritual truth that was at the end of that question. Every time he interacted with people, even the woman they brought to stone because she was caught in adultery, instead of saying, yep, your guys' theology is correct, I guess there's nothing I can do, he went right to the core, to the heart of the matter, to the person, that woman sitting right next to him. And what did he do? He added tremendous value to them. And this is what I think in humanity, this is where I think, not that we're missing it, or not that we've lost it, or not that it's gone, but I think sometimes we've turned to the validation of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions as being what truly makes us worth it. The beauty of the water into wine story to me is how much you can see validation tied up into it. Water that was once used for washing becomes the most delicious and the most valuable substance on earth. A provision for the entire community, adding tremendous value to each and every person who partakes of it. The water into wine is about you too. Your life may look like bathwater right now. Murky, cloudy, cold. But God's plan for you is that through a validated spirit, you become the most valuable substance in your life. You. Me. When we take a step back and we look at this miracle of turning water into wine, and we really examine it for how big it really was, that it wasn't just a small thing, that it was a really enormous thing. And at the end of the day, this miracle, yes, there was some spiritual parts of it, but at the end of the day, it was to validate Jesus. That's how much God loves you and I. He'll make a party a better party if it adds value to you. He'll make more wine if it makes you understand how much he loves you. Out of almost thin air, he's capable of creating tremendous value. A validated spirit is a journey, one that will contain rejection along the way. It will never be immune to moments where we're rejected. In fact, honestly, you might even experience more at an increased rate, because a validated spirit won't think, feel, or do simply because it's going to get the response at once. It's going to think, feel, and do out of the value that it has, and not everybody's going to like that. Not everybody's going to like to hear you say, no, I'm not going to do that. Not everybody's going to like to hear you say, well, maybe we should think about it first before we decide to say that. A validated spirit keeps you facing what is yours to face, facing the daily battle, the challenges, the joys, the losses, the gains, the pains. You may only see it 1 inch at a time. Each day, you might have to go through it to get just even 1 inch closer to a full understanding of what the value is in you. And then the next day, another inch. And it might be a battle every step of the way. It might mean that where you've amputated things off, like I just don't want to be a part of this anymore. It might mean the painful experience of having to regraft that thing back on. It might be an amputated dream that you've decided, I'm never going to think this again because all it does is hurt me. It might mean you reattaching that thing to yourself again. It might mean you yourself has to reattach, where you've cut yourself out of this whole thing. You've decided, I just don't belong really in church. I don't really belong in Christianity. It just doesn't fit with me, so I'll just cut myself out of it. But the thing we got to remember is your validation coming from God makes you and I worth just as much as anybody else. You may only get a single inch of spiritual ground a day. But you know, a single inch every day amounts to about 10 yards per year. It doesn't seem like a lot, does it? 10 yards? That's like 6 big steps. But you ask any professional football player out there what the difference 10 yards could make. The difference between a champion and a runner-up. The difference between a Hall of Famer or a has-been. Just 10 yards. And this was, after I woke up with this word and I thought through all of this, and this is like a continuing experience and expression that's coming out of me, is this journey that each of us are on, and how different for each of us it looks. And some things for me are really important and really spiritual that might not be for you, and some things for you might be really important and spiritual. But at the end of the day, I feel like a validated spirit is what's truly going to allow us to continue moving forward. It's your value in God's eyes that he has no doubt about. He 100% sees you as validated, worth, true. You say, yeah, but where I'm at right now just doesn't count. Yeah, but what I've been doing right now just doesn't count. Yeah, but the things going on in my head just doesn't, something's wrong. Something's got to be fixed. And that might all be true. But that to me is a byproduct of us looking for validation in all the stuff that we can affect, instead of really looking in the mirror and looking at what the Lord has put in you and saying, I'm validated because of him, not because of what I say, what I think, what I do, or what others say or think or do about me. They've got no control over it. It's God and God alone. And this experience I'm having right now, at least, is as I've walked this out, it's a day-by-day thing. I wish there was an arrival moment. I wish that I would wake up one day and just know that I am 100% valued to God and be able to live the rest of my life out like that. But it just does not work that way. If it didn't work for Jesus that way, I don't see it working for us that way. It's a journey. It's an experience. It's an inch-by-inch battle. You might only get 10 yards a year, but it might change your entire life. So don't just cut it off or cut it out because it doesn't look like it's working right now. Don't just pour the bathwater out because it seems worthless. Don't just throw yourself under the bus. Don't just think, well, nothing's really changing. I'm not really maturing. I'm not really experiencing anything, so, whatever. It's just whatever. Fight for that inch. Fight for that inch. Every day. Fight for it. Yeah, it's just an inch. But man, life is a game of inches. Go ahead and stand to your feet. We're going to close, and I just want to pray over you. And those of you online, thanks for joining us today and being around. And let's just bow your heads where you're at and just position your hearts towards the Lord right now. And just wherever you are, whatever step you are on this journey, whatever place you're at, whether it's all making sense to you or you just didn't really get anything, God, I believe that God has a powerful message of love for you today. And I believe that he's been speaking this to you just like he's been speaking it to me. And there's no amount of people out there or voices out there that are going to really convince you that he loves you. There's no amount of Bible you can read that's truly going to finally get you to a place to know he loves you. There's no amount of prayer. There's no amount of YouTube videos. There's no amount of sermons. There's no amount of church attendance. At the end of the day, it's a day-by-day, inch-by-inch journey of continuing to move forward. That's a validated spirit. It's not one that has it all perfect. It's not one that remembers all the scriptures. It's not one that has everything just in all its row. It's one that continues to push and move forward. And I'm going to fight for an inch at a time, God. And maybe there's days I don't even get that inch, but at least I'm not moving backwards. Maybe there's days where I don't even feel any movement forward, but at least I'm still looking towards you. We open our hearts to you right now in this moment. And Lord, we just one more time acknowledge your great love for us. It's true that you chose us before the foundations of the world. It's true that you count every hair on our head. It's true that you have an unconditional love towards us. It's true that even while we were still sick and while we were still lost and we were still in the world, God, it's true that you loved us and you sacrificed for us. It's true that there's thousands of promises about us. It's true that we have the mind of Christ. It's true that we have the inheritance with Jesus, that everything that he had, we have. It's true that his character lives in us. It's true that when our shadow even passes by, it changes things. It's true that everything that we touch will prosper. It's true because we're true, because we're validated, because we're valuable. And we thank you. We thank you, God, that we don't have to earn it. We don't have to achieve it. We don't have to find it. We don't have to search for it. It's a gift that we get every day. It's free, but we got to fight for it. It's there for us, but we got to go for that inch every day. And so, Lord, today we're just asking you one more time, help us to fight for that inch. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus.